Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members, educate yourself through free webinars and blogs, and even create your own customizable research library. Membership starts for as little as 49 cents a day. Download the Investigator's Toolbox app or visit our webpage at www.investigators-toolbox.com.
You guys have been hearing for a long time about how much I love Crosstracks, but now you're going to hear from somebody else. So we got George Gerges here. George is a member and a user of Crosstracks. George, tell me real quickly what you love about Crosstracks.
The simplicity of using it and the ability to customize everything that you could do with Crosstracks is awesome. It actually allowed me to take the way that I do my business and implement it into their system. And not only am I able to manage 10 or 15 cases, I'm able to manage 50 to 100 cases with the same effort.
Fantastic. So Crosstracks, the case management system, they are SOC 2 certified. Basically, that's an encryption, really an upgrade. They're the only ones out there that are doing it. So please support this great sponsor that supports our show. Check them out. The links are in the show notes. Crosstracks, if you're an investigator, you should be using them today.
Welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. On November 14th, the New York Times published an article about private investigators being used as tools by foreign governments for espionage. We had Wes Bearden on a few weeks ago to discuss this topic, and today we welcome him back for some follow-up. So please welcome Wes Bearden and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Very interesting article came out this past weekend in the New York Times. Iran and China use private detectives to spy on dissidents in America. We covered this subject a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago. This article was by Benjamin Weiser and William K. Rashbaum from the New York Times, and they took a quote from somebody, some illustrious guy who was actually on the program here to talk with us. So I asked Wes Bearden from Bearden Investigations to come back on, and I wanted to just continue to talk a little further about this topic because it's all over the message boards. Folks were really coming to light on this. So Wes, I want to welcome you back to the program. How are you?
Well, thanks. I appreciate being back, and I'm doing great. I'm doing really good. It's good to see you, man.
Good. Yeah, we're winding down the year, full steam ahead, and things are good. But we've still got this problem where we're getting hoodwinked into working for foreign national governments. So
yeah, it's a weird problem, to be honest with you. You know, what the article talks about basically is that there are certain government actors, particularly Chinese, particularly People's Republic of China, Iran, who are trying to hire investigators private investigators under false pretenses. Yeah. And basically what they're asking investigators to do is legal activities that you normally do, surveillance, locating people, but it's for nefarious purposes that they haven't told you about. Right. And they've gotten really good at it. And there are, I think, two pretty well vetted out cases in that article. One guy I think escapes liability. The other one was still potentially has liability. And it's an interesting scenario that I think we all have to start watching out about a little bit. So.
Yeah. I mean, we can stand at the top of the mountain and talk as much as we want. But at the end of the day, you got to do your own due diligence on who you're working for. And even what's scary is the fact patterns, the way that they were approached for doing the work. You look at it on the top level of things, on the surface, permissible, right? Yeah, of course. Okay. This person stole money from you and you're looking to recover money on behalf of a third party. Like, to me, the case I'm referring to is one of these cases here where, the individual in New York was contacted by somebody with a New York company. They were paid with a check with a New York company. And, this New York company, a translation service, was like working on behalf of a company in China, right? And to me, that's a red flag right there.
Well, it is, and China's unique. I mean, look, China, the state is embedded with a lot of the industry, to be quite frank with you. So there's if you're a Chinese company, there's a good chance that the state has some hook into you, and we have to just kind of be aware of that. But yeah, what's concerning about this, if you look at the facts, is that the lies were not. I mean, there were things that you would normally do. It was a company just trying to find somebody who owed them money, so that they could effectuate service and figure out what's going on, and so on and so forth. I've also heard, I don't think this has been reported in that one, but I've seen a couple now that have been reported to me personally, where they're coming through law firms that are usually foreign-based law firms. So now you've got a lawyer who's on the phone with you, telling you that they're trying to do X, Y, and Z, and that even brings more credibility to it. And what I'm afraid of is that when you have unlimited resources as an intelligence agency, whether you're with the States or UK or China or whoever, you kind of got an unlimited budget to create smoke and mirrors to get what you want.
Yeah. So this was also a situation where the investigator was required to notify our government, the United States government, that they were going to be doing this work, right? Is that how I understand?
Yeah, really what these guys are getting prosecuted, and I think probably unfairly, or I don't think, I believe very unfairly prosecuted, is their failure to register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, FARA. Mm-hmm. And if you live in DC or you're within the Beltway, you know what this law is, because you probably work in government. And all it says is if you represent a foreign agent, not a foreign individual or foreign company, but somebody who's working on behalf of a foreign government, you have a duty to register. And the Department of Justice has all these rules and exceptions to how you register. And so that's what these guys are getting tripped up in. It's not like they did anything that they did was illegal, meaning the surveillance or the locating or the identifying. It's the fact that they didn't come and tell the government, hey, I'm working for a foreign government doing this. And that's the real crime that they're being charged with, frankly.
Yeah, and it's to my understanding that the one in Flushing there, it had to do with a individual that China was looking to repatriate, right? And there was some sort of contact along those lines. And to me, that's when it starts getting a little gray as well. Like if that did happen, then yeah, that's a little too weird for my taste.
It is. They're trying to find these people. There's probably some evidence that they may be trying to abduct them. But, of course, they don't tell the investigator that. So the investigator doesn't really know that, but and I think that it had these investigators known who they actually work for or what their actual goals were, that they would have declined this type of representation. I mean, they would have said, no, I don't want to do that. That's illegal. But again, they're tricking us. So we're part of being defrauded. I think that these reporters, or at least when I talk to them, I think they get that. I think they understand that we're being unwittingly used here, and we're doing what we can to check these people out. But there is only so much that we can do, and particularly when if you're checking them out, doing your due diligence like you should be doing, the other side has an endless pocketbook to hide who they are. It makes it a little difficult. Yeah. But I still think we're I think that the reporters really understood what we were trying to do. So
yeah, I'm sure they're creating their backstories and all that for the due diligence checks. So, I mean, this is really it's spycraft, man. And you look at it. I think the article was relating to it. I thought was interesting and well put. That we're a cheap alternative, right?
Yeah.
If you could get boots on the ground where you don't have to spend years and years grooming somebody to develop information for you, why not, right? The exposure's limited. So what if the guy gets burned? Not my problem, right?
Right.
Very interesting concept and way of doing things. I thought it was very funny too with the other guy who ended up getting off, that he was doing surveillance. This was with a woman from Iran, where the FBI like approached the guy like, hey, the people you think you're working for are not the people are not who you think they are.
Right.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. And, that kind of puts an investigator in a tough position too, or a lot of us, because, one of the things I learned years ago is that when somebody comes out with a news article, don't ever read the comments.
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Especially if you're quoted in there.
right. You just can't do that because, I mean, there could be an article tomorrow about how it's a great day for, you and me, and somebody will say, well, it's not great over here. So, and I understand that, but if you read some of those comments, I think that you can see people struggling with what is the right answer. And, it's going to take some education of investigators. It's going to take us doing due diligence of those individuals. But even in a situation like that, many private investigators are hired to be criminal defense investigators. And so the agency on the other side of what they're doing, or they're trying to prove that did or did not do their job correctly, is the FBI.
Right.
And so how do you call up the FBI and say, I have a client who may or may not? I mean, you got to be very clear about that.
Right.
Your first, are kind of the constitutional rule, and I think it does apply to investigators to a degree, particularly if you're working with lawyers. But your competences, and we have confidentiality statutes all over the place. You can't, your client comes to you and shows you, their poker hand. You got to keep that quiet. And how do you call up the FBI and say, okay, hey, I may or may not have a client, and so I'm basically screwed on. If I tell you about it, I'm wrong, and if I'm right, then I'm maybe I parlay favor. I mean, it's difficult to deal with.
Yeah, and there's definitely ethical issues behind that as well, right? What's proper and what's not.
That's right. That's right.
I was speaking with my wife about this too, and just tell her, like, this is why I only work in that one vertical that I work in, because I feel like there's less of a chance that something like this can happen.
Right.
The whole know your client thing. New York is such a big city, and there's just so many different types of people and different intentions, and personal injury, it may not be the biggest windfall when it comes to hourly billing.
Right.
You can definitely bill more for due diligence and doing, a different type of investigative work. But to me, it's like I can sleep better at night knowing who I'm working for.
Well, the whole idea of know your customer. It's funny. I was talking to somebody about it today on another issue, but where we get in trouble as a industry or profession, and I really believe we're more of a profession, but where we get in trouble is not necessarily on you getting burnt or screwing up a case. That doesn't happen. Really, where we get in real trouble is where our end customer or end client does something stupid, and we assisted them either willingly or unwillingly to do that. And that was the same thing with DMV. That somebody provided a DMV record to somebody who shouldn't have had it.
Rebecca Schaefer, right? I mean, everybody knows.
Yeah, everybody knows that story. Yeah. And so it's know your customer, I think, is the most important thing that we really need to be preaching over the next probably decade or so, because that's what's gotten us in trouble. Everything else nobody's ever really complained about. A few have, but know your customer is really critical for us, and I think we have to continue to do it. And it's going to be, this just proves it's going to be harder to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and I know I had Tina Thomas on recently. We were talking about data privacy and things of that nature, and our ability to do research and things like that. And every time there's a whoopsie, it becomes that much harder for us to continue to fight for what. For what we're trying to do, right? It doesn't make it easier, especially in an election cycle where someone's trying to make a name for themselves and hitting those hot button numbers to, talking points to make themselves, to talk to their constituents, right? Everybody doesn't want their personal data out there, for anyone. So it's crazy, right?
Well, it is. And, there's no quick solutions to any of this stuff either. And that's like, I was talking about those comments. If you read those comments, there are people in there who say, well, every case should be checked out through the FBI. Well, that's just, number one, I don't think it's legally possible. I don't think it's ethically possible to do that. Number two, we should just get rid of private investigators. Number three, we should federally regulate them. And, all those are answers that are geared for a modern day type deal where we want a quick answer for everything. We want to, this is what we're going to do, period. But this is a complicated problem, and we've got a pretty good system, and we've got a good group of good profession in the United States who generally wants regulation. They generally want the bad guys to be out of the business, and I think for the most part they have. They don't want to be committing crimes. They don't want to help foreign intelligence agencies. They're not people who are, they're most of them are ex-law enforcement, ex-intelligence people. So, the solutions are going to be complicated, and it's kind of hard sometimes when you're looking at these things. But the first solution, which has been around forever, is know who the hell you're doing business with.
Right.
And, that's it. So, I think that we're beginning to see that, and I hope that everybody takes notice of them.
Yeah. We're going to jump out real quick. Just take a quick break. When we come back, I want to start talking a little more about that, like knowing your customer and just some tips that maybe we can give folks that get in these situations on how to do that, how to know your customers. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back.
Are you a member of NCISS? Do you know what this great organization does? The National Council of Investigation and Security Services was formed in 1975 to keep a watchful eye on legislation that affects our industry. Now more than ever, there are data privacy and DMV issues popping up all over the country. Consider joining and supporting this much-needed watchdog for our industry. Learn more at nciss.org. Information Education Consultants is proud to announce that their Certificate of Professional Investigation is now available online at IECOIT.com. If you're interested in learning the investigation profession, what better resource to consult than the mind of the nationally renowned private investigator, Rory McMahon. Rory has compiled 40 years of experience into an online training resource for the benefit of the current and next generation of professional investigators. The site offers CEUs for current licensed professionals and is a recommended stop for our true crime aficionado friends and family. Check it out today at IECOIT.com. That's IECOIT.com. Looking for an insurance agent that puts you first? Every PI business is different. That's why OREP Insurance can shop multiple markets to ensure you get the best coverage to meet your unique business needs. OREP's model is business by the golden rule, and for over 20 years, they've built their business by putting their clients first. So come enjoy a fast online application and same-day certificates of insurance at OREP.org. OREP has coverage for armed investigators, executive protection, and even has a separate policy for security firms. The application takes less than 5 minutes, so visit OREP.org today. OREP.org. Don't forget to check out the latest issue of PI Magazine, available online or via hard copy. Visit PIMagazine.com to learn more.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today we have Wes Bearden from Bearden Investigations in Texas. Wes, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So we're talking about the New York Times article, Iran and China use private detectives to spy on dissidents in America. Wes, you and I were talking offline during the break, and we feel there are more articles around the corner, right?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some. I mean, it's a very interesting proposal that or situation that these guys found themselves in. And I think that generally the news media find this to be pretty interesting stories. So you're going to see some further coverage of this type of stuff, and we'll just have to see if it continues to get out of hand, or if we as a profession get together and really stop some of this stuff. But there's, like in any profession, there's so many people. And so it's important to spread the word, which is kind of what we're trying to do today.
Well, not only that, you're talking about a 9 or 10% growth rate too in our industry. So there are a lot of folks that are coming in that just don't know.
That's right.
Nobody's told them. And the sad thing is that they're not a part of these associations that's trying to get the word out and doing things. So, they're counting on the internet, hopefully programs like this, to get a little bit of information on how to do it. I gotta say, I was very Very impressed, I would say, about all the message boards that I am a part of. You know, the associations I'm a part of had put the article out and had commentary on it, which is pretty cool. So it is this thing of like, hey, like this is a hot button issue, folks. This is what's going on. Don't let it happen to you, right? So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a hot button issue, and I'm glad to see everybody starting to talk about it. And it, you know, as you know, I'm on the board for World Association of Detectives, and we had a little conversation at that at our last meeting in Aruba. And I think that'll continue to go on because I think this is an issue not in just happening here in the United States, but I think it's happened in the UK, and I think it's happened in Canada, and a lot of places where they can get away with it, where they have interest at. So, anyways, we'll see it again, I'm sure.
Right. So before we took the break, I had talked about due diligence, know your customer, things like that, and we talked about maybe some ideas. What would you recommend to folks, especially the newer folks that are just getting into this business, on how to know their customers? And again, this isn't legal advice. We're not, lawyer.
Sure.
Well, you're a lawyer, but we're not giving legal advice. This is opinionated. We're having a discussion here. Like, what are some of the procedures that you would recommend for somebody to do to know their customer?
Right. Well, look, I mean, the first thing, you've got to set some procedures up whether you're a one man or a 10-man shop, it doesn't really matter. You need to have some procedures that deal with this. And for instance, I mean, that can start off with simply just running some type of compendium database like a TLO or a IRB. I mean, there's so many of them now, on your client, and looking at them and making sure that they are who they say they are.
Right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is I always tell people, look for the reason. Don't look for the identifying who they are, right? There's nothing that says you can't represent a foreign individual, and you can, and all the time. And I've got several right now that are non-U.S. citizens. What you can't do is represent them when they are an agent for the foreign government, and that's the tough part. But find the reason why they want to do it. For instance, if somebody wants to file suit, ask them, well, where's the lawsuit at? Can I see the petition? If you have a lawsuit, that's a good reason, right? Whether you're a plaintiff or a defendant or whatever. So find the reason that they're wanting to do this. Not necessarily, I mean, yes, you need to identify who they are, but find the reason. And then if you're still unsure, I'm going to say this, and I've always been leery about saying, get a lawyer involved. And I've said that because years ago when I became a lawyer and I was an investigator, I didn't believe that every case needed a lawyer, number one. Number two, I always was real concerned that people were going to say, well, yeah, Wes, you're a lawyer. You're just trying to get all the business.
Right. Bill hours, buddy.
Yeah. And I thought that was a fair, deal. But I am kind of getting more and more convinced as time goes on that anytime you're doing these type of really complicated investigations or even simple ones, I mean, these were simple deals. These were $5,000 cases that were, yeah. But I hate to say this. I do think it's worth your while to get a lawyer involved. And when you do that, particularly here under FARA, it basically exempts it. So, for instance, if I am representing an individual or even a foreign government, I, as a lawyer, can represent that foreign government without registration, as long as there's an active pending lawsuit, because it's public record. So there are some exemptions like that. And I'm not just talking about FAR in this unique situation. I'm just saying that many times there's a lawyer can provide you additional coverage that you can report things to, that maybe, your statutory duties to report it to somebody. A lot of times there'll be an out to get a lawyer involved. And look, if you got a client that calls you, you say, well, this guy really doesn't need a lawyer. I understand that. There's still some lawyer that will accept the reports, listen to the client for a couple of minutes, make sure that what you're doing is legal, make sure that you're kind of following, your guidepost. And there's ways that if you find the right lawyer, you can use that, as a referral source to make money and be even more successful than what you are. Right. But I hate to say, I think that the industry, the profession's coming that way, but I feel like it is to a degree where an attorney just gives you so much coverage that it protects everybody involved.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to only work on cases that involve attorneys. It's just, again, my vertical, my personal choice. In fact, when I get contacted by somebody who's not an attorney, it's always one of my first questions, right? Did you hire an attorney? Is an attorney associated with this? And when they say no, I say, okay, we'll go find one and have them contact me.
Right.
Because I don't want to deal with it. You said something earlier too that I just want to go back on. You talked about an individual, whether or not they are associated with a foreign government. I think it's not only that individual, but if they're stating that they're representing a company, making sure that company, the ownership of that particular company, is not a government, right? So you could do your diligence and say, okay, well, they're not working with China. You're like, I'm not working for China. The Chinese government didn't hire me. Yeah, but that particular company that this agent says they're working for, is probably state sponsored because of just the way things are structured there in China, right? And understanding, how that all works too. So you really got to be when you're looking at something, it's not just the person, if they're representing a particular business entity, that you really got to examine that business entity, right?
Yeah, you do. And particularly in some of these, places where there's, the Communist Party. I mean, many of these industries are owned by the state. So you have to ask and say, who are they and what are they for and what are they doing and things like that. And so, it does take that. And, another issue that you can do too, now I don't think it'll absolve you of guilt, but, we build this into our contracts, and yes, my contract now after, we've been business now for 50 years. So after all the time that's been added on, there's a bit long, but there is a section in there that says, hey, if you represent a foreign government or an entity or whatever, you need to disclose that to us immediately. And so that we have a duty because we may have a duty to report it. Now, I've never had a client read that and say, "Oh yeah, by the way,
I'm a spy."
Yeah, and it won't exculpate you from any type of criminal liability. Look, I tried to, but it does help. It does say, listen, I was aware of this issue and I was trying to stop it, and I got duped or I didn't get duped or whatever. So.
Off the record, my name's Boris, and this is my wife, Natasha.
right.
Off the record.
right. And that's, that's going to be the problem. So, but, it's a myriad of these things that you kind of, build these traps in when you onboard a client,
right,
so that you have an idea, where for instance, my case management system, I'm sure everybody uses something different. It requires me to put in where the hell we get this referral at. Just, and the purpose of that was to send somebody a note and say, thank you for referring Joe to us. But,
right,
it also helps for us to track where these guys and gals are coming from, these companies, and make sure that we are on, on the correct footing. So,
yeah. I mean, it's definitely a lot to take in. And, the other suggestion that I would give is that if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. Like, be careful. Yeah. Don't be a honeypot,
Well, no, you never know. And, that's the funniest thing about this business. And it kind of happens when you first start. As you kind of get older and you probably have business for a while, you deal with the same people over and over again. And that's just life, I guess.
Yeah.
But when you first start, someone walks in your office, you really never know what the hell that case is going to be, and you really never know who that client is and where it's going to take you, which is fun, and that's part of the reason we're in this business.
Chinatown, baby.
yeah. But you got to sit down and kind of start thinking, hey, who am I really working for? Do I have somebody here who has a legitimate interest? I never say, do I work for the good guy? Because there's a lot of people who don't. I mean, I here in Texas, we do a ton of criminal defense work that's appointed through private investigators. And, I mean, like, I think when I was doing mostly investigations, I think I did north of 150 capital murder cases. most of those guys were not good guys. Okay. Most of those guys were really not good guys at all, but they did have a legitimate reason they needed an investigation.
Sure.
The state was going to try to take their life, and they had a right to to challenge the evidence and confront the constitutional right to confront the witnesses and what they said. And so, we had a reason to be doing what we were doing.
It's a great country we live in, just to be able to have the ability to do that, for sure.
Right. So just make sure that you have a real reason to be there, and if you don't, I do think this too, a lot of private investigators are very scared to talk to each other because we're 1 or 2 man deals.
Right.
And we are, I kind of equate us to the old cowboys. We're kind of out there trying to, be a tool for all types of administrative justice. But if you have a problem, pick the phone up and call. I mean, I've never had anybody, if you call me, it may take a day or 2 to get back to you. But if you have a question, change the names and just pop off the hypothetical, and I'll try to tell you what I might likely do, and go from there.
I know what you're going to do. You're going to tell them to hire a lawyer. Come on, we talked about this already.
Right. Well, I'll try not to do that. Your first
Here's
call.
my rate sheet, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, if you have a small problem, or you have just a quick question, call me. I have no issue with picking the phone up and saying, yeah, here's what I think. I mean, if you call me 2 or 3 times, yeah, then I'm probably going to start billing you. But you need to, but if you have a quick thing that you're real concerned about, give me a holler. And a lot of investigators, a lot of longtime guys who've been around for a long time, I don't think they have a problem with that either, to be frank with you.
Yeah, and that's the fraternity of the industry, right? So if you make a vested interest to be involved, attend events, be part of associations, just take a real vested interest to know what's going on in the industry, you will meet some of the most amazing people. I look back, I so many years I was in business where I stood in New York and I didn't really get out there and do my thing. And a season for everybody, right? It's where I needed to be at the time. I was building my business, building my family, really focused on doing whatever. But then one day I just like, you know what? I'm going to start joining these associations and going. And as soon as I did, I've met some of the most incredible people. I mean, tons of them have been guests on this program. And it's just good people all over. And now I'm more involved with WAD, and I'm meeting these amazing people around the world. Just fantastic. I mean, I just had something today where an attorney had called me a case I'm working on, and the guy's like in the Netherlands, and we got to verify something. So I was like, okay, well, probably going to need somebody local there. Oh, you can do that? Yeah, I can do that. If you want to spend the money, I can do it, no problem. Right. And it wasn't even like, oh, I'll have to get back to you or something like that. It's no, I got covered, and it's like, that's because I'm going to the events now and I'm meeting people too, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I think every one of these organizations, I'm real involved in WAD. I've been involved in Tally and CISS, but every one of these organizations have something different to offer. And you really got to get to know these people. I mean, I know a lot of times if you're a younger guy, you go to them and say, well, these old crotchety guys are just sitting there. But trust me, there are
becoming the old crotchety guy, which is scary.
yeah. But believe it, sometimes the old crotchety guys know what they're talking about, and sometimes there are guys and gals that are sitting in the back that are very quiet, that are not talking a lot. And I know sometimes in any industry or profession, you have some people that are very braggadocious, and a lot of times maybe those are not the people that are the most the sharpest. But there are a lot of good people in this profession, and each one of these groups, you need to really get to know some of them, because they're grappling with the same problems we all are. I mean, the Apple iTag thing now is becoming a big deal. You can see a lot of news stories, and a lot of legislatures beginning to worry about that on the state level. It's happening everywhere. I mean, I had a meeting this morning, and for in 2 different states it's going on. So just try these things out. They just offer you so much resources. And then the other thing that you're going to find too is you're going to find people that you may meet that have become friends, that'll be friends for life. And that's a great thing to have.
And friends that understand what you're going through,
that's right.
Which is even better. They understand the ups and downs of this business and the commitment that it takes actually to be in business, to do this business. A lot of people don't realize, oh, I'm on my second career now, just go be a PI or whatever, like there's work that goes into doing that, and folks don't they don't recognize the commitment there. So yeah, and that's the importance of associations. I mean, I think we've covered that verbatim recently. I don't want to keep hammering in on that. In fact, I think we're probably going to wind down here. I did want to come on and just talk about this article because there was just so much chatter about it on the message boards, and it's just kind of a hot topic. And I wanted to talk about how to protect yourself. And again, we're not lawyers, we're not giving legal advice. But Wes, how do folks get a hold of you if they had any questions?
Yeah, the best way is you can go to beardeninvestigations.com or beardenlawfirm.com. There's one's my law firm, one's my investigation group. And my phone number is 800-943-2670. Feel free to give me a call if you have an issue, and we'll try to work it one way or the other.
Great. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're a busy guy, and always a pleasure to have you on and just riff on this stuff. And yeah, one day we'll have you on and we'll talk about something completely different. So.
Yeah, hopefully not something that looks like a disaster for us. But yeah, no, I appreciate. Thanks for having me, Matt. It's been a real good time.
All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch everybody next week on the next show. Take care.
Thank you to Wes for jumping on for this hot topic button issue. Also, we want to say a special thanks to Crosstracks, Investigator Education Consultants, OREP, and NCISS for sponsoring our show. So please support our great supporters. Have you thought about joining Investigators Toolbox? Now's the time to get on board and join the fastest growing digital community for investigative professionals. Use code PIP201836 and save 10%. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'd like your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a brand new show. So make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.